You Can't Escape is a series of detective stories set in Morley Farms featuring Simon Harper, his assistant Mr. Numb Gaffer, and police inspector Mr. Marmot. Morley Farms is set in fictional location where people still have servants and the police routinely seek help outside the force. While set on Earth and bearing many similarities to our own world, it is set in a completely different timeline. Picking the Wrong One is the first story of the series. In this story, a jewel gets stolen from inside of a computerized mechanical safe. Simon Harper must help his friend Tomayo Judas and the police to solve just who stole the jewel and how. In the town of Morley Farms, Detective Simon Harper, a retired police officer, is well known for his intelligence, quick wit, and ability to solve even the most difficult of crimes. Due to his experience serving with the police, he is well versed in the intricacies of all manner of crimes, from petty theft through to murder. He often works alongside the police to solve a variety of mysteries. He works in his office on Douglas Street, a respectable building to fit with a respectable man. Comfort and practicality are the hallmarks of this small office where the rent is cheap and the work is plentiful. Mr. Numb Gaffer, his assistant, hasn't been working with Simon for very long and considered himself quite ordinary when compared to his employer. With a lot to learn about the world of detectives, he intends to learn all he can from such a highly respected man and hopes that one day he'll be able to start solving crimes himself. This detective thriller is written by Sarmad Nazif Ahmed, a writer from Pakistan. If you want to read the whole novel, you can get it on Amazon. You can find the link to it in the description below. Now let us get to our story.
You can't escape picking the wrong one.
Autumn was fast approaching the town of Morley Farms, which enjoyed short summers, long winters, a colorful autumn, and practically no spring. Outside, the leaves on the trees were already beginning to turn vibrant spots of yellow, orange, breaking up the pure green that had once graced the streets, and the weather had quickly taken a turn for the worst. That Wednesday morning, the rain hammered down against the window as I and my employer, Mr. Simon Harper, sat across from each other. Simon was poised to snatch another victory that morning while I fumbled with making a decision on which piece to move. Not only could I not pick between my bishop and castle, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to direct that particular piece to. Simon had well and truly screwed me. "Come on, Numb," he admonished me, fingers twitching in anticipation. Patience was the one virtue that Simon didn't have, eager to claim another win on his scorecard. All in all, it sometimes felt like my whole role was to slow him down to avoid mishaps on our adventure. Oh, and lose at picking the wrong one. "Don't rush me," I said, frowning down at the board. My only real aim now was to limit the damage that had already been caused. Winning was quite out of question. A mixture of old maid in which you must avoid winning the designated card and chess. I had made a right mess of it. In the very first move, I had managed to select the dreaded joker from a hand of 6 cards, and because the rules stated that he must, Simon took away one of my chess pieces. He had been generous about it, stealing only a pawn, but since then the match had continued to go downhill. Letting out a heavy sigh, I could feel my brain chugging away inside of my skull. How could I trick Simon into taking the joker back? His queen, the most terrifying piece on the board, was quickly closing in on my king. If I did not disable it soon, then the game would be over sooner than it took to boil a cup of tea. Sweat beaded my brow as I elected to sacrifice my second knight, who had been sitting useless on the board since the match began. I did not know it then, but I had unwittingly sealed my fate. Simon's fingers flittered over the cards I held out to him, dancing across the seven, the ace, the joker, and back to the ace again. Sometimes I wondered if I had some kind of tell, announcing when he was touching the joker because I could not recall Simon picking it a single time. Today was no different. Plucking the ace from my hands, he grinned. Another pair. There was a stark difference between the size of our pair piles, Simon's at least doubled that of mine. Bad luck, Numb. Only when I play with you, I retorted. Outside, the rain continued to lash against the window, playing erratic drums against the single pane of glass. Accompanying it was the scrape, scrape, scrape of twigs from the sapling a client had gifted us to warm up the place, and the clatter of the blind. Simon persisted in keeping the window open for a breath of fresh air. Checkmate! I groaned, staring down at the board dumbly. How on earth had I missed that move? He had pushed forwards his bishop, cutting off the last means of escape my king had possessed. You don't play fair. He shrugged. After so many games, Simon had heard it all before, and the truth was that I was as unlucky as I was dumb. Despite my love of strategy games, my victories were outweighed by more losses than I could count. Blackjack, poker, checkers, it did not matter what we played. I invariably lost. One could argue that Simon was a genius, so it was natural that he would win, but if he really was a genius, then it wasn't fair for him to possess such good luck, attractive features, and talent at almost everything he put his hands to. If it sounds like he is perfect, I assure you that he isn't. There are many things that Simon doesn't shine at, but he very craftily avoids them so that he appears to be a hero out of literature. Another game. There didn't seem much point to it that morning. Rain always made me feel glum, and my mood had been considerably worsened by the fact that a truck had rumbled past me this morning, soaking me from head to toe. With a heavy sigh, I leaned back into my chair, feeling as miserable as the weather. How do you do it? I asked. Simon had not just easily won the chess part of our match, he had also won Old Maid. Having assigned values to each of the chess pieces and to the cards, in an ideal world we would have tallied up the scores to find out the victor. That was completely unnecessary today. Practice, now come on, I'll give you a handicap. Before I could shake my head, there was a knock at the door, and a faithful servant, Joseph, entered. His shoes shined to a gleam. Cutting a lithe figure, Joseph had a crooked nose that looked to have been broken one too many times, and ear tips that might have belonged in a half-elf of fiction. He had worked for Simon long before I came onto the scene, and was unfailingly polite, efficient, and helpful. Anyone standing next to him tended to look underdressed, and it was he that prepared Simon's clothes so that he didn't look like a walking trash can. What is it, Joseph? Simon had already begun to pack away the pieces as if he knew exactly what it was. You have a guess, said Tomayo Judas. It never failed to surprise me how deep Joseph's voice was. If I would have had to describe it, then I would compare it to the soft rumble of thunder. He needed only to put on a stern expression and raise his voice slightly in order to intimate unruly visitors. Thankfully, there was rarely a need for it. Show him through. Yes, sir. Departing, Joseph closed the door, and a gentle click that told me he had taken a hold of it carefully, lest it throws itself shut on the breeze of wind that rushed across the room. At that moment, Simon swept away the rest of the figures and swiftly collected the cards into a neat little pile, shoving them towards me in haste. Hide them, quick. I did as he asked, and had barely returned to my seat when Mr. Judas was shown inside. A tall man, Mr. Judas had to duck beneath the doorway, a hand held atop his head as if he were holding himself down. Despite his years in the country, he still spoke with a strong accent that blurred together his words in excitement, and his soft eyes shone with friendliness when he was stood behind his shop counter. Today there seemed something different about him as he strode across the room towards the small table. Simon straightened himself up immediately. No gift today, Tomayo? Immediately I recognized what it was that had been bugging me. Mr. Judas was a collator of information, and whenever he felt that he had something important up his sleeves, he would always drop by to sell it to us, a hopeful look in his eyes. What was more, he never failed to bring a gift with him, usually a tub of coffee beans for Simon or a new product that he thought we may like. No, sir. What more can you expect from a man who has just lost his most precious possession? Sensing a case, Simon leaned forwards in curiosity. I was sure that he did so subconsciously because he always took care to maintain his posture in front of clients. Gesturing to one of the spare seats, the ones reserved for visitors, he suggested that Mr. Judas take a seat. Mr. Judas shook his head, hands twisting around in front of him. Agitation curled about him, seen in the way his body slightly vibrated, and his eyes blinked rapidly. Whatever could have upset him so? I don't see how I can, sir. I'm much too wound up. But you must, Simon insisted. It didn't do well to have clients pacing up and down the office, not with Miss August below us, who ran a small business grooming pets. Fortunately, we had a set of stairs that led straight up to the second floor, making sure that our customers need not traipse through a fur-riddled mess. While I was sure that Miss August was a tidy and clean person, allergies didn't much care for even the lightest of messes. Dander, I think they call it. Finally, Mr. Judas took a seat, hands folded up neatly in his lap. Simon nodded in satisfaction. Now tell me what the trouble is. Where do I start? I suppose I should tell you what was stolen. It was a jewel, the most beautiful jewel you have ever laid eyes on. It shone like the sun on the ocean waves, and was a goodly size too. Immediately I could tell that we were going to take this case. Simon had that look about him and said so, and in truth we really turned anything down, especially not a case from a friend. Nothing was too big or small for Simon to handle, and while I would rather not spend my time searching for lost cats or trying to catch his spouse cheating, Simon was fond of saying that we should not be picky in how we help people. Tell me from the beginning. When did you receive this jewel, and from who? Nothing pleased him more than a complex mystery, and he would have forgotten to eat and to sleep were it not for me and Joseph. More Joseph than I, who could be just as bad once I was at the heart of a mystery. My favorites were locked room mysteries, but alas, those were found mostly in fiction and not in real life. In anticipation, I took out a notepad and pencil, which I always carried with me, just in case. Simon had a terrific memory, but mine was only average, and it was more useful to have the information written down where I could find it than to spend hours racking my brain for the thing that had been forgotten. Mr. Judas licked his lips nervously, fidgeting about in the seat. Doubtless this jewel was worth a lot of money. Yesterday at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon I received a package at my store. I hadn't been expecting anything, and the store was rather quiet, so I decided to open it. Inside the first box was a second, and upon it was a note. Well, I'd only gone and forgotten my own birthday, which my friend in Africa had remembered for me. How a fellow could forget his own birthday was beyond me, but Mr. Judas had no family here, and despite his love of gathering information, was actually rather tight with anything to do with himself. I knew where he had come from and a little about his journey to this town, but beyond that he was an enigma. I was shocked when I opened it. In all honesty, such a thing for me? At first I had thought to keep it because a gift should be appreciated, and it was such a cheerful looking jewel, but I very quickly made the decision that I should sell it. I have been in a desperate need of money lately with the opening of that big supermarket around that corner, and I could not see any other way to get the money at all. But I had not completely sold the idea to myself, so I decided to keep the jewel somewhere safe while I slept on the decision. Mr. Judas was talking far more than he usually would, and I put it down to the nerves and stress of the situation. I have a very secure safe, one with a computerized mechanical lock, where I keep my money for the shop. It is a very good safe, or at least that is what I believed until today. This morning, maybe 3 o'clock. This is what I learned from the police. Somebody had broken into my store, but by the time they arrived, the thief was gone. But I did not find all of that out until this morning when I went to the shop early to realize my assistant wasn't there. I was shocked to find the police there standing around a broken window. I was very pleased to see that the safe was still locked, but when I opened it up, the jewel was gone. He paused, then added, "The strangest thing in that they left the money." "That is strange," I said, unable to fathom why the thief would do that. Kindness? Lack of time? Maybe tempered greed? Simon was quiet for a moment, absorbing the details of the case. Then he nodded slowly, as if he understood what the rest of us didn't. "A few questions, Tomayo. Whatever you need, just please help. First of all, are you certain that you locked up the safe?" "Yes, of course I did. I checked it double, no, triple times just to make sure." There was no hesitation in his answer, and I was inclined to believe him. Almost anybody else would have done the same thing when they were locking away something so valuable, especially if they had no insurance on it. Our theories have made us to believe that Mr. Judas, if he had managed to insure it, so there was that small mercy. "And what about your shop assistant? What's his name?" "Craig. Oh, but there's no way that Craig did it," Mr. Judas said adamantly, daring us to suggest otherwise. "I always leave the shop at his disposal when I have some work to do elsewhere, and he never does anything wrong. Not even a penny has gone missing on his watch. He's very honest. I would trust him with my life." Not that the two of those were mutually exclusive. I turned my mind back to Craig, a friendly-looking lad with a slightly jutting chin and overly bushy eyebrows. He almost always had a smile fixed upon his face, and he would chat aimlessly with the customers while he served them. "All right, I understand," Simon smoothed. "Tell me about your normal routine." Judas took a calming breath before continuing. I could see he was still riled up about the mild suggestion his assistant may have done anything outward. "Craig opens up the store at around 6 in the morning, and on a normal day I would join him at around 8. Often I work the back in the mornings, and then we both take separate lunch breaks, Craig first and I second. At 5 in the morning I leave to go home and leave the shop with him until 8 when he closes up." "That's an awfully long shift," I ventured. "He needs the money and begged me to give him more hours," Mr. Judas explained. "I am getting on an year, so I was only too happy to give him that." "I see. But earlier you stated that you close up the store at 5 in the evening," Simon pointed out. "He's often quite direct with his clients, saying that if he wants them to be straight with him, he had better do the same to them." "Well, you see, come on, now just say it." "Craig had to leave the shop early yesterday at around 3 o'clock. His mother is very ill these days, and currently she's in the hospital. He's so worried about her these days that he often asks permission to leave and visit her. I can't deny him that. She's all that he has in this world. We all hope that she can have her heart operation sooner and get better. That is why he was working all those hours." It was a sad state of affairs. Simon clapped his hands together, startling two of us. "Right, thank you very much for that. Now we should visit your shop. By the way, who has been assigned to your case?" "I can't remember. Officer Jordan, Officer Jameson, Officer Janford. Ah, that's it. Ah, good officer. Let's be on our way. Time is a-ticking." So a new case and a new story. Let's see what adventure this jewel has for us. Whether Officer Janford has anything for us or Mr. Craig gives us some clue. There is much more to come in our next story.
So this was our today's story. Hope you like it, and if you do, don't forget to press the like button and give us a thumbs up. Your sharing will help us grow and keep us motivated. And do subscribe our channel so you get notified with our stories. And if you want any improvement in our story, you can tell us by commenting in the section below. Thank you very much. See you soon in the next one.